a guest, Josh Apple, and he's a automation expert, especially with Zapier and Make. And we're gonna give some ideas to the audience on how you can use Zapier and Make to put your business more on autopilot. How's it going today, Josh?
It's going great, Ryan. Thanks for asking.
Great. So Josh, so what kind of automation stuff do you do? What's possible for some people who are a little bit more new to Zapier and Make?
Sure. These platforms are just two examples of the platforms available to connect different SaaS systems together. So connecting social media like Facebook to your CRM, so your list of leads. A lot of people use these kinds of automations to move leads around. A lot of people use these automation tools to automatically make tasks happen within their business, especially in project-focused businesses, automatically sending documents for signing, or when a payment is made, automatically creating a new project in ClickUp or Asana or whatever it is you're using. There's so many different software as a service platforms out there, and very few of them talk to each other well. So that's where these sort of glue platforms come in.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So, for some people, who don't know, what would you say the biggest difference between Zapier and Make are?
So Zapier is more user friendly, and by far has the largest app support. There's even really obscure softwares that I've never heard of that are really like niche down, and they will have a application in Zapier to support it natively. However, with that extra support and user friendliness comes the highest pricing of any of the automation softwares. So that's the trade-off. Zapier also doesn't really handle advanced scenarios very well. The way they do like branched paths, so like you can reach a stage in the automation where it can do multiple actions based on logic you provide. Zapier handles this really poorly using something called paths that's not very visually intuitive, as Make.com, which is just a rebrand of Integromat, which looks beautiful but ruined there, makes it hard to search for anything on the platform. With Make.com, you can essentially do anything a programmer could do. It's got really good visuals for routing the path according to previous steps and logic. It's got great functionality for looping, so iterating through a set of items that you've passed it, and the custom module to talk to other servers or custom applications is much better. So it's not as user-friendly, though. It's almost best for someone who has some programming experience, and that's just the main differences. Oh, it's way cheaper, too. It's something that's a major plus.
Yeah, so in summary, you would say is Zapier is more like the beginner tool, and if you want like more nitty-gritty, more advanced stuff, you would probably move on to Make.
Exactly. I would even say that Zapier is like the devil tool, because it's like they hit you so hard with the pricing. If you need to make a Zap with logic, and most sophisticated Zaps need some logic, you have to be on the professional tier, which means you're going to pay $75 a month.
Yeah.
That same scenario in Make would cost $9 a month or less.
Got it. That makes sense.
And you'd have a higher limit. But the thing is, every company knows about Zapier, and it has such great visibility that they have support for so many more applications. So that's why a lot of times you have to work with it. Sometimes I'll even start on Zapier because they'll have the trigger I need, and then I will use Zapier to call a Make scenario to finish the logic.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. So Josh, when would you say you would say, I need to move this to custom software? At what point do you think Make.com would even break doing these integrations? So
the great thing about these applications, especially Zapier, is when you get errors, you can go in and visually click around and fix it. And sometimes it's hard to get a developer on short notice to go in and fix code. And if you're not familiar, like where your code lives or how it's structured, a lot of people go cross-eyed when they look at code. So if you're going to be maintaining it yourself, or if you're going to be iterating it, like you want it to be rapidly iteratable, or maybe like the software doesn't supply like an effective API or sometimes a well-priced API to work with directly, a lot of times Zapier will have a free connection to that platform you can use. So that kind of paints two scenarios where you go to custom. I think anytime you need like a dashboard or like visual interface elements, you should go custom because that's what these tools can't do. These tools are best for just piping information around and like basically replacing a VA.
Yeah, makes sense. But how about in terms of cost consideration? So does make.com charge by usage as well? Like at some point, would it just make sense to just completely do a custom because your Zapier bill or your make.com bill is cost more than how much you would pay a developer at some point?
The thing about Make is, yes, they limit you on actions and data, but you usually don't hit those limits, even on the cheapest plan, unless you're running the scenario like every minute.
Okay, so what would be an example of like too much usage? Are we talking 1,000 calls a month, 10,000 calls a month, 100,000? What would you say is?
Yeah, if you're getting up to 100,000 calls a month, Make is still going to be in the couple, like maybe $100 range, maybe a couple hundred for like hundreds of thousands of calls. There's also a platform called Integrately, which has a bit better pricing. Say once you get to 1,000 or 100,000 calls, then you should look custom because if your main concern is price. Personally, if I have something that's like lead harvesting for me and like doing hundreds of something 100,000 times, it's either a really high value operation or it belongs to another software, like an email sender. Like it shouldn't even be an automation shouldn't even have that purpose because it's too like some tiny action is being done over and over again that there's definitely specialized software for.
Okay, I understand. But are you ever afraid that it'll go down, or have you had any experience where the thing failed and you didn't know about it and then you lose visibility?
No, I feel like that's more of a problem with custom code because these platforms notify you immediately when you get an error and they notify you if a scenario or a zap has stopped due to too many errors. So no, I'm not really worried. They always notify in a timely manner and I've never missed a notification.
Okay, that makes sense. And what would you say about multi-step zaps? So can you kind of explain that a little bit more, or which platform would be a little bit better for that?
So I realize we're maybe getting into too much detail early on for people listening. In my opinion, most useful zaps have multiple steps. The whole two-step zap thing on the free plan is almost useless to me. You're always going to want to at least filter. And just adding a filter step makes a two-step zap into a three-step zap. You need the trigger and the action and then a filter between them to not do the action all the time. From there, adding other steps is just all about other actions you want the zap to take, depending on what's happened. So say someone has paid your business, right? You might want the zap to look up the deal in your CRM, mark it as paid, record the payment, create a new project record in monday.com or ClickUp or whatever your project management software is, assign the project manager, assign the developer, assign a designer, move the sales documents into the project entity for reference, notify your team on Slack that the payment has been made, notify your finance team of the exact amount and what account it went into, and then automatically email the client onboarding forms.
Oh, okay.
That's an example of a zap that I've built for my own company, and that one saves at least 3 hours every time it runs. And of course, with our agency, we have multiple payments a week. Yeah, one zap can save you a ton of time.
Got it. So me and you, we operate in an agency business. What are some like common scenarios that you hear of from many businesses that people can use Zap like right now and help them automate some of the process? Can you give us like one or two that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, so that payments recording thing is very valuable on the back end. So after someone closes, kicking off delivery, because a delay there really pisses people off. Starts a project off on the wrong foot. But if they make a payment and the robot goes and does its work and they get instant feedback like an onboarding form, it starts your project off on the right foot and buys you a lot of goodwill down the road if you have delays from your team. So that's a really common one. The other really common ones that I see are actually on the sales side of things. So taking leads from, say, Facebook or LinkedIn or email inquiry and piping them into your CRM and creating a new deal so that your sales rep can contact the lead and start working on it.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you give us a more advanced example, like that maybe has 5 steps, so people have an idea on what's possible?
So that payment one lays out like a lot in terms of what's possible, because that's like a 20-something step that I was describing there with multiple logic paths, because we have different kinds of payments. And depending on the product they purchased, the automation is going to perform a different set of tasks. Keep in mind, I also have that automation recording payments, not only in our accounting software, but also in my sales dashboard in Notion. So that's a really advanced one, but there are a ton of advanced ones. One I made for a guy last week was he was using Open Phone to call and text clients in the real estate business. And he needed, every time like he received a call or a text, he needed that person's record to be looked up in his CRM, which was Fresh Sales, and a new record to be added to Fresh Sales about what the message content was and what kind of activity it was. That wasn't really a zap. I made it in make.com. That one kind of looks like a spider because you have to sort the message by incoming or outgoing first. And then you need to search the client based on the from or to phone number, depending on which of those it was. Finally, and there's another route on both of those paths that if the client this is the first time the client has actually gotten back to them, or the first time the client's been contacted, but there's been no sales activities previously, then the deal stage needs to be updated. That was a bit of a nightmare because the Fresh Sales API is really poorly designed, but we got there in the end.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And can you give us an example in the project management space? So we've talked about sales. We talked about sales. So what would be an example of something with project management?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So there was another client late November, who was trying to connect 2 platforms a lot of you should have heard of, so ActiveCampaign and Asana. There's no really great integration between those two. She was basically recording tasks in ActiveCampaign, but ActiveCampaign is email marketing software, and their whole deal sales CRM system is not really well thought out, whereas Asana is list-making software and task-making software specifically. So it's always going to have an edge at that kind of activity. So she's trying to centralize everything in Asana so that she doesn't feel like she's missing anything. So the task was not only to forward any tasks made in ActiveCampaign to Asana, but also if those tasks are updated in Asana or closed or completed in Asana, that information should be synced back to ActiveCampaign and vice versa. So it was basically a 2-way sync between ActiveCampaign deal tasks and a specific list in Asana of tasks. So that's really useful for project management, right? We also made a list inside Asana to sync in her Acuity events. So events that are booked are going to be associated with a date and a time, but also tasks that are made are associated with a due date and a time. So all of these things that we're importing to Asana, because Asana is integrated with her Google Calendar, she now knows that for sure, okay, things are getting blocked off on the calendar that need to be blocked off. And she can look at the calendar and it shows everything, not just a few events or not just tasks from a specific platform. It actually shows all of the tasks and all of the events. And in this way, we were centralizing her project management in Asana.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds very useful. What can people look forward to in 2023? Are there any big leaps make.com and Zapier are going to make? What should people look out for?
I really hope that make.com keeps working on their documentation. Because changing their name from Integromat to Make, if you Google your automation SaaS, like the SaaSes you're working with, and then make.com or make, and then the action you want to do, you'll never find a walkthrough. Because make is such a generic word. Like Google almost ignores the word make because it's like, oh, you're trying to make something. Of course you are. It doesn't think about the brand. Right now, every time I have to look something up for make, I have to type Integromat. So hopefully they keep investing in SEO and their branding and documentation to make things simpler. And I know of a number of platforms that are always improving their API. And every time they improve their API, we can do more custom things with Make. We can do more custom things with Zapier. I'm not seeing any major breakthroughs, but I am seeing some undercutters and competitors to Zapier trying to build their own apps and their own interfaces, like Integrately, which is a direct competitor with Zapier. So there might be further downward pressure on these automation platforms in terms of pricing, which would be good for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. When you're paying per action, it's that taste in the mouth.
Yeah, for sure. Now, of course, it's fair. Every action it does is saving you time, so you're paying to save time. And of course, the premium is worth having a visual medium to very quickly prototype and understand things, in my opinion. For a developer like you, that may not make sense. Doing it with a PHP container is second nature to you. You can line up the same get and post HTTP requests that you would make in Make, no problem. But for those of us who like to work with like flow charts and flow diagrams, these are really cool tools.
Yeah, I agree. Like for me, like I personally feel like what Zapier can do will literally take a developer like 1 hour to do and to make that integration, and to pay monthly for that per action, it doesn't feel very good about. I don't feel very good about it. If it's part of your core internal product, then like I said, I prefer not to pay an extra monthly fee. Like for our company internally, we built our own ERP system and CRM, and we have our automations all coded in, and it's working for us, and we don't have to pay more fees per month. But
yeah, I think that makes sense for a custom development company. I've tried so many different CRMs and done so much research that there are always like a few tools or a few pieces someone's missing, or something's not quite set up the way I want, or maybe a CRM has every single feature, but the UX is terrible. I'm very picky when it comes to that stuff. And I'd probably just keep like changing and fiddling and modifying endlessly.
Yeah.
If I had my own ERP.
Yeah. You also have the option, right? Yeah. So that brings us to the hour. So Josh, like if people want more help with automation work with Zapier and Make, how should they come and contact you or find you?
Yeah, sure. So I can get automations planned depending on a business model, or built out based on a plan or an idea. Or I also build automations to automatically process leads, have salespeople reach out to them, find you salespeople to reach out to them. Anything that has to do with automating the sales process, I'm your guy. You can check out my website, which is convertclicks.io. And you spell it as just the word convert, CONVERT, and then clicks, CLICKS.io, convertclicks.io.
Cool. And for anyone who wants to make custom software or custom apps, you can reach out to me at techwithryanwong.com. And so it's techwithryanwong.com. And then we can get on a call and go over what your exact requirements are, and then see if we can help you build it from there. Okay, everyone. So we'll see you guys next week, same time. And I'll talk to you later.